Hi everyone! Today we are going to do the first painting video, and for the sake of this video, it's one I've been wanting to do for a while. I want to talk about master copies. Now, when I'm saying master copy, I mean doing essentially a color study of a master painting. We're not looking for detail, we're not copying this every single brushstroke that we can see in the painting. We are just studying its color, so drawing isn't something we're really thinking about. We are thinking about colors and value and hue and all of those things that are really important to make up the visual impact of a painting, but we're not really looking for the paint quality or the drawing to be faithful to the painting that we're copying. So I'm excited to go over this with you guys. It's been one of the most helpful things that I've done in my art education journey. It really helped me learn to see color better. It really helped me get faster at mixing color, because if you do these all the time, you just naturally get faster over time. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'll start out by listing the colors on my palette. And this is pretty much my standard palette that I use for everything. It consists of lead white, chrome yellow primrose, which basically is just a cad yellow lemon, yellow ochre, raw sienna, pyrrole red, think a non-toxic cad red, basically, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, viridian, raw umber, burnt umber, and ivory black. The only one that I'm picky about with brands is raw umber. Otherwise, I'm not very picky about which brand of paint I'm using. So I'm just going to start out with a very rough drawing to get myself in the ballpark. I want to get the general proportion right, but I'm not massively concerned if it's a bit wonky. The point is to study color, not get caught up in the details. If I'm too precious with it, then I might end up with a tiny painting, and while that can be fun, for me personally, I don't find that it helps me get the most accurate colors. Now that I have a rough drawing in place, I'm going to start by mixing the darker values. The reason for that is I often find the darker value color mixtures, especially the fairly low chroma ones, a bit easier to mix. So I find it's better to give myself an easier win first and then move on to the harder color mixtures from there. The darks are a bit hard to see on camera, but for context, I'm trying to go for that greenish color I can see in the background. Now that my darks are laid in, I'm going to start mixing the lighter value colors. My goal is to be fairly quick about this. I want to just lay in my colors as quickly as possible, because once the colors are laid in, I can start to make corrections and judge the color more accurately. One of my teachers put it to me this way: the thing that is the most wrong in the beginning of a color study is going to be the white of the canvas. So in other words, the white is the thing that is the least similar to what I'm trying to color match in the painting. So my goal is to cover it up as quickly as possible with my best initial guess at the colors. For the flesh tones, I'm going to think more broad color, almost like the face is an egg with no features on it. When working on a study this small, that idea is a lot more helpful to me personally than if I tried to get the exact color of the eye socket or something like that. Now, if this were a bigger study or a more cropped study, then that would be different. But in most cases, when working on a portrait that's a part of a larger context, I think the egg is the way to go. You can see a lot of work happens on the palette, which is why I've chosen this wider angle shot so that you can see my mixing as well as the painting. Later on I'll zoom in a bit so you can see the painting in more up-close detail. I'm currently looking into some better filming equipment so that I can have one camera on my painting and another on my palette, but for now I wanted to share the whole of what it looks like when I do these poster studies, because I think setup and a question of how to orient yourself if you're trying to mimic this at home is a question that often comes up a lot. Now that the white of the canvas is covered, I'm going to clean my palette off so that I can start mixing my colors fresh again. I find that this just keeps me from getting lazy with my color mixtures and mixing with what was left over from before. It's important to look at the whole study after you've done the initial lay-in of color. My advice would be to look back and forth from your painting to the master copy and identifying the color that feels the least like the one in the master copy. In this case, I'll probably tackle some of the notes in the hair because it feels like it's leaning too warm when I compare it to my reference. Now that I'm going in and looking for nuances and those smaller color notes, I'll sometimes find that I have to push the color a bit more extreme on the palette than what it will end up looking like when I put it on my canvas. That's because it's mixing with the fresh paint that I already have on my painting surface, so at this stage it's still really important to keep your palette as clean and organized as possible. The other thing I'll recommend is keeping your brushes nice and clean and having one brush per color zone. In this case, I'll have at least one brush for my flesh tones, one brush for the dress, and one brush for the darks. I'm also working with a few other brushes in this example in the effort to keep everything as fresh and clean as possible. Now we'll go ahead and zoom in on the master copy so you can see a bit more clearly what I'm doing. I'm still not thinking about drawing as the most important thing, but when I am doing these little nuances, I do want to try to place them in approximately the right location, just so I can see if it's giving me the same impression as the reference. The The other thing I'll mention is I've ended up cropping my version a bit, so you'll see I don't go for the colors at the very bottom of the dress, and that's intentional since mine just doesn't have as much space there. Something I should mention here is that how I learned to do these poster studies was to do them even more broadly, with only a few color notes and basically just really focus on getting the most broad, accurate color possible. That's an incredibly helpful way to do these as well, and if ignoring the smaller notes is something you struggle with, then an easy solution is to just do them smaller so that you're forced to use as few color notes as possible. However, as I started to work on my own paintings after graduating, and even a bit while in school, I noticed that my color studies weren't as helpful as I wanted them to be when they didn't have the smaller indication of the more nuanced color notes. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that I'm doing this master copy from a printout as opposed to a computer or a screen, because I find a printout or a book to be easier to try to match colors against. I don't have anything against working from tablets or screens, but I enjoy this process so much more. If you're a beginner, I think it would be a lot easier to match colors against a paper printout rather than a glowing screen. Okay, I think we're just about done with this master copy. To wrap up, I'll say if you're interested in trying this at home, think general to specific, big color notes to smaller color notes, and don't be too precious with it. These kinds of poster studies are meant to be learning tools, so they really are just meant to be practice. And if you have questions about color, definitely look up the Munsell system and check out Paul Foxton's YouTube channel, as well as he has some great videos explaining the Munsell color theory system. I hope that video was helpful. I'm really excited to start sharing painting videos with you guys. I hope to do more in the future. I am currently looking at upgrading some of my equipment so that I can make these videos a bit higher quality, and I'm really excited to get into all that, so be sure to stick around if you want to see more.